So now that all the files of MLK, JFK, RFK have been released, I realized something. And again, I read most of JFK's because a lot of them are repeats. They build on each other. RFK, I don't think there was a lot. Nothing was really, I didn't read any of those, but I don't think anything was really learned from them, except that he was once the conservative when he was a Senate staffer, RFK Sr. But anyway, I'll get to that in a minute. MLK, obviously, that's 240,000 pages. So, but what I realized is it was like the perfect storm happening, if you think about it. It was. At all angles, all three of these men, and again, nothing against their families. This is my observation of what I've read so far. At least, because what I've read from JFK, those I've read, but then the MLK, that'll take a long time. But what it seems to me is that these were all men that were about social justice. Social justice. Hiding behind, we're about civil rights. We're Democrats. We're moderate Democrats. Like, that's what used to be said about the Kennedys. No, they were far left radical liberals. It may not have always shown, but so let's start with JFK, okay? Ken, the immediate thing he did that I don't know how anybody could F up was the Bay of Pigs. Because Eisenhower set up the Bay of Pigs and said, if you decide to do it, JFK, you just got to give air support. So that was on Eisenhower's way out and JFK's way in. So it was all set up. So he could have said, we're not going to do it at all, and that would have been fine. He's the president. But instead, he told them to do it and then didn't give the air support. That was the most important part. He put people in danger. Then he turned around and instead of taking accountability, but again, he was a kid. To me, that's the danger with young people, being a president. It is. It's, no wisdom. But it may just be that he wasn't on the right side of shit either. But I don't think he was. But then turns around and it immediately, the first thing, blames the CIA. What happened with MLK? Blame the FBI. Well, what would communists fear the most? CIA and FBI. Because prior to Kennedy, what FBI is today and CIA shit. But, because of all of the radicals that have gotten in because of these men, in my opinion, on that. But because the Democrat Party itself has been tied to communism in the Washington Federation back in the 30s. They've always had these links to it. And then, but you can see it's out in the open. It's been slowly being out in the open. You got that one in New York running, and of course, they all hide behind socialism. Nobody will run on communism. You know why? Because of what J. Edgar Hoover did. Because he put those people in jail. Because they were literally trying to use our laws to say, no, we should have a right to overthrow your government. So a bunch of them went to jail. So, of course, no communist will ever come on the heels that they're a communist. It'll always be about social justice, racial equality. It'll always be about socialism. But again, socialism can't last. Communism loves, they're married, communism and socialism. Communism sits back and says, oh, socialism's at work. We'll just sit here and wait until they are destroyed because they never last, and then we'll get in there, and because we're miserable people that are always going to be miserable, we want to make everybody in the world miserable. That's what communism is. But we have a bunch of them. We have the squad communists there in the House. We've got the one in New York that's running, and they hide behind this socialist label. Of course they would, because prior to JFK, we had, people in the CIA and FBI that protected us from communism. You could respect it then. And with MLK, I can understand it too from the FBI. And not just because he had a big movement, but he had this huge nationwide movement. Nothing wrong with that. But his organization, which was the Southern Christian Leadership Convention, that was his. people in it were tied to communism. That was the FBI's issue. Then you add to that, he has a nationwide following. He's going to be having this protest, and he's making demands on Washington, D.C. Making demands. So those things, personally, would be red flags to me. And people can say, oh, the FBI there's this too detailed to be made up. Are you kidding me? I mean, it's one thing, like, look at the FBI today. It's crap, right? I mean, look at what they did to Trump. They literally had to create a Russia dossier just to have some stupid reason to go after him. But, look, yeah, they created that. There's so many thousands of pages of this detail that maybe he wasn't, but there were so many people around him that were. So you can understand it from the FBI's perspective. But then you look at it that JFK's in, MLK's coming on the scene, then you got RFK over here, because the Kennedys, their dad was a Nazi sympathizer. He didn't like Jews. And JFK himself wrote in his own journal about how someday Hitler would be seen as a hero. So not right in the head. So you have that not right in the head. You have MLK, there's people in his organization. He has this huge, massive nationwide movement going on, and they're making demands. JFK, that's, has a fascination with Hitler and his dad who hates Jews. And then, to boot, you have RFK that at one time was he was a rhino, really. Was a conservative. Okay, this was back when he was a Senate staffer. The Senate staffers, they're the ones that sit behind the politicians. So this was back when he was young. And so, yeah, he was a conservative. Yeah, and don't you love how the media, why Robert Kennedy transformed from a conservative into a liberal champion of civil rights? Yeah, right. He was always part of the social justice, socialism, communist movement. Kennedy's early career included working as a Senate staff member for the right-wing demagogue, of course they'd say, Senator Joseph McCarthy. It would have been reasonable to conclude that as a young conservative, he could only move far right as he aged. Well, no, of course not. He was already in the left camp. So, and the issue he had with McCarthy was because RFK Sr. didn't like the way that he felt that McCarthy was too harsh in Senate hearings on communists. Are you kidding me? Who cares? In a Senate hearing, he thought he was too harsh to communists. So do you see how it's the perfect storm? You have the Kennedys, both, that their family history seems to either idolize Hitler or, and are Nazi sympathizers, and then even are, one of them claiming that at one time they were conservative, right? And then you have MLK coming up with this mass movement in America, claiming it's about civil rights when really it was about social justice. It was really just about getting all of these, the communists in. That's what it was. That's the reason MLK that attacked FBI or that the FBI's been attacked by them. And I'm not saying the FBI is perfect. Believe me, I'm not some cheerleader for the CIA or FBI. But prior to JFK, they were trying to do something. I mean, J. Edgar Hoover, there were people we had in our government that knew what a danger communism is. And it's always going to be a danger. So Tucker Carlson tries to act like, or some of these, comedians try to act like, oh, that's just old people talk. No, it's not. That will always be there, because it's a mental disorder, really. Go read the JFK files so you can understand how many South Americans were being trained into guerrilla warfare. It was to then go back to their countries and stay sleeper cells until they were, signaled to take action, and all over South America. So I'm not trying to go after any of these men's family. I'm just saying that it was the perfect storm of communism coming in, and it got into everything. The CIA, and then brought us Barack Obama.